Immediate, complete, and unconditional withdrawal from the territory of Ukraine. That is the call tonight from the United Nations on Russia. It's the wording of a resolution that was just passed resoundingly by the UN General Assembly with 141 countries backing it. The UN took the rare step of calling an emergency special session to vote on a 10-point plan to end the fighting just as the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine approaches. But unlike Security Council resolutions, this one by the General Assembly is not legally binding on any of the member states. Let's go now to our very own Ines Pohl. She has been following developments for us at the UN in New York. Ines, so we've got approval of this resolution overwhelmingly, but by how big of a margin are we talking about?
Yeah, it is indeed overwhelming, and it's a huge success for the Western alliance led, I think that's fair to say, by President Joe Biden. So 141 nations voted in favor of this resolution, 32 abstained and 7 against. So this is really the second highest vote for a resolution regarding the war in Ukraine. Brent, I think it's worth to have a little bit of a deeper look. So Russia, Belarus, North Korea, Mali and Nicaragua voted against the resolution. Brazil, and that is important, voted in favor. They voted the first time also in favor. The last resolution, October 2022, they voted against it, and now they voted for it. And the reason for that is Joe Biden sat down with President Lula for 2 hours in the White House and convinced him. So there was a lot of groundwork which led to this huge success.
And you know, a lot of commentators today, Ines, have been saying that Vladimir Putin's plan is just to wait out the West, and that it's just been a year, maybe 2 years have passed, and this solidarity that we're seeing with Ukraine is going to fall away. This vote today, it may not be legally binding, but I mean, would you agree it sends the signal that global sentiment in support of Ukraine has not weakened?
It does send a signal, and it does send a strong signal, but Brent, this resolution was really watered down. It's really, in a way, very commonplaces which are made there. They didn't agree on really bringing Putin in front of a trial. That was a request, kind of, or a wish from Ukraine. They want, the resolution says this war should come to an end, but it doesn't really say how. So, yes, this is a success, but the danger of the alliance kind of weakening and falling apart is far from over, because many nations, especially from the global south, now say, let's end this war as soon as possible, even if that would mean that Ukraine would give some Russian-occupied territories like Crimea, for example, to Putin, if this would lead to an end of this war. So we shouldn't overstate this outcome, because, again, the resolution was, some say, a vanilla resolution, a definitely watered down resolution.
Yeah, some people would say whitewashing the realities of war. Our Washington Bureau Chief Ines Pohl with the latest on that UN General Assembly resolution vote. Ines, as always, thank you. Well, the fighting, it has devastated Ukraine and had a major impact on the global economy and on international relations. But what about inside Ukraine? The UN has recorded more than 8,000 civilian deaths from the fighting, but says the real figure is probably much higher. Around a third of the population has been displaced. Millions have fled their home country. The UN says more than 17 million Ukrainians are in need of humanitarian assistance. Russia has suffered repeated setbacks on the battlefield, but it still controls about a fifth of Ukrainian territory. And Mariupol, it is one of the cities in Russian-controlled Ukraine. Over the last year, we spoke repeatedly to Maria Serachenko. She managed to escape from Mariupol along with other civilians while Russian troops blockaded her home city. Earlier, she told us what life was like in her hometown before the invasion.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. Yeah, it's very strange to think about what was 1 year ago. And 1 year ago, I was actually not having any fear because I couldn't imagine that the full-scale invasion would actually happen. So, the Mariupol was a rapidly booming city full of happy people. My parents were living there also, my whole family, and it was really growing, developing. No one could imagine that something terrible would really happen, even though since 2014, when the war in Donbass started, Mariupol was really close to the front line. But nevertheless, it was relatively calm and safe before the full invasion started.
You yourself, you've experienced a tragedy, the likes of which Europe has not seen in decades. Most of the city that you're from has been destroyed. I mean, the pictures, they tell the story. How has that affected you personally? I mean, how have you tried to cope seeing your home city devastated?
It's really hard to digest, to process that I have no home anymore, that my parents lost their home, my grandparents and all my family is now scattered all around the world. They are in different countries. We cannot gather for a family dinner, for Christmas, and it's really hard to understand that, we won't be able to come back probably in the near future because actually most of the city was destroyed. And it's really hard. Mm-hmm.
Do you hope that you'll be able to go home one day? I mean, is that something that you allow yourself to think about?
I have hope, I have faith that we'll be able to go back, to go home, and the city will be deoccupied really soon. But unfortunately, we can't predict when exactly will it happen. But anyway, as you've seen the pictures, there is no Mariupol anymore, like the city that was before the full invasion, before the war. So even if we go back, it won't be the same.
Maria, do you still have contact with people who are still in Mariupol or around Mariupol?
I have some of the people who were my relatives, for example. They were in Azovstal and they were captive. They were held in prison by Russians. Now they are on Ukrainian territory. And fortunately, my whole family, my family is out of Mariupol. They escaped, but I have some of the people who are still there. I know them, and I still see some photos of them even on social medias, but I can't talk to them anymore frequently. So that's the reality.
We have reported all through the year about just the sheer numbers of Ukrainians who fled the country when this war began. You and I have talked about that before as well. You did not flee. I mean, you're still in Ukraine. Kind of explain to our viewers what went into your decision to stay inside the country that is being attacked.
I think it's a choice. It's a choice of morality, and it's my personal feeling that I'm needed here. I have lots of my friends, my colleagues who decided to just go to the army without any previous military experience. They just left their jobs and they are defending the country. And when I look at them, I realize that I can do something here. I can volunteer, I can help, I can, gather some money, I can work and be useful for the economy. So it's kind of a moral choice to be here, to stay in Ukraine.
Tomorrow is the 1-year mark for this war. What do you think we'll be talking about 1 year from today?
I really hope and I believe with all my heart that we'll be talking about our victory. We'll be talking about rebuilding Ukraine, rebuilding Mariupol, about investing, money, about people coming back, about Ukraine becoming a center of, tourism and many other things which are associated with peaceful life. So I really believe that there won't be any war in our country in 1 year. It's my personal belief.
Well, I am sure that there are lots of people around the world who share that hope with you, Maria. And we certainly wish you and your family all the best moving forward. Maria Serachenko joining us tonight from Kyiv in Ukraine. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Well, it is yet another clear sign of international indignation over Russia's attack on Ukraine. Delegates meeting in Vienna at the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, boycotted the session because the Russian representative was present. The OSCE includes 57 countries. It was created during the Cold War to promote East-West dialogue. Ukraine has called for Russia to be expelled, but the rules make that unlikely.
Natalia Pipa is a Ukrainian member of parliament. She came to the Hofburg in Vienna to take part in the OSCE's Parliamentary Assembly. But now that she's here, she won't be going inside. Why? Because the Russian delegation has arrived.
Murders are in prison. It is the reason why we are boycotting this session of OSCE, because murders is on the table of negotiation.
Delegations representing Ukraine and Lithuania are boycotting the event, and a Slovakian member of parliament left the assembly on behalf of Ukraine.
We must not let these warmongers win. Not now, not ever. Slava Ukraini!
The president of the Parliamentary Assembly believes that Russians should be present, but thinks that now is not the right time for dialogue with Russia.
1 year into this awful war, it is indeed the momentum to further increase pressure on Russia and to do all we can to ensure they are hearing the words unified support for Ukraine.
Mikita Poturayev, head of the Ukrainian delegation, demands reforms within the OSCE.
If one country member of OSCE starts war of aggression against another country member, the presence of its delegation in OSCE should be suspended.
On top of all this, every OSCE member country has veto powers. Because of Moscow's veto, the organization has had to stop projects in Ukraine.
Our correspondent Rosie Bertrand, she's in Vienna, and she told us how Austria is responding to the criticism over its decision to invite the Russian delegation.
Now, Austria has come under some political criticism for issuing visas to these Russian parliamentarians, members of this parliamentary assembly. But I spoke to a spokesperson for the Austrian Foreign Ministry, and she insisted that her country is under international law obligations to issue these visas to members of the parliamentary assembly because Austria is the official host country of the OSCE. This has shed a spotlight on Austria, which is militarily neutral. But that spokesperson wanted to point out, of course, that Austria has been supporting Ukraine through humanitarian aid, through sanctions on Russia, and the fact, she said, that around 50,000 Ukrainians now call Austria home as refugees. There was quite a scene to behold here in Vienna as one Russian lawmaker began talking at this parliamentary assembly. The room began emptying out because there was a walkout. Now, that lawmaker went on to say he was happy people were leaving because it cleared up the atmosphere, and he was very critical of the way this whole parliamentary assembly is being conducted. Now, these talks are expected to continue on Friday, and so too is the controversy, because of course that coincides with that fateful day 1 year ago, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine.